everyone, welcome back to another episode of Pleasure Principles, the podcast where we peel back the layers of societal noise and sink into what makes us truly feel alive, whole, and wildly human.
Mm.
Yes, I'm your host, Avik, dear listeners, and today's episode is a sacred invitation, an exploration of our animal nature, orgasmic instinct, and the intimacy uh, continuum that expands as we reconnect with the aliveness within. And to help us, dear listeners, on this journey into this terrain of sensual sovereignty and embodied wholeness is a guest who doesn't just walk the talk. She weaves the wild into every word she speaks. Yes.
Mm.
Please welcome Jessi Marino. Welcome to the show, Jessi.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this with you.
Amazing, amazing. So, dear listeners, before we start, as you know, I'll quickly love to introduce Jessi with all of you. So, dear listeners, Jessi is an embodiment mentor, ritualist, and the founder of Wild Essence, a movement that is devoted to reclaiming our sensual vitality, sovereignty, and the sacred connection with self, others, earth, and magic itself.
Mhm.
Yes. So, dear listeners, Jessie's story is one of the radical reclamation through the trauma, illness, heartbreak, and exile. So, she's returned to the pulsing wisdom of the body and now guides thousands of people to do the same. So, take a deep breath, drop into your body,
Mm.
because this conversation is not just one to hear, but
Mhm.
it's one to feel.
Yes.
I'll not take much of your time, dear listeners. Let's get into it. Welcome to the show again.
Thank you so much. That was such a beautiful introduction. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jesse. So, Jesse, like, quite literally, I mean, uh, what does animal nature like mean to you in the context of sensual embodiment?
Mm. Yeah. I mean, I think that our experience of humanity has been turned into this mechanical
Mm.
instruction manual for how we make our bodies do whatever we're asking them to do rather than how we get to experience our lives as an organism, as a part of a connected whole. So, animal nature to me is primal instinct and sensuous permeability, conversation with our natural world that is really in our design and something that I feel like we get to come back into relationship with so that
Next.
we can rebraid. Yeah. Mm.
That's amazing. That's really amazing. And like, and when that nature gets disconnected or maybe suppressed, how does it show up in our relationship and the bodies? What do you have to say?
Oh, everywhere. I mean, everything from I notice, especially because I've been working with bodies for such a long time, I can actually see it in our ability to focus our eyes or our awareness of gravity or bumping into things or just like on a very basic level. And then in every other facet of our lives, our relationships to food, our conversation capacity, the depth of intimacy we feel with other people. When we're disconnected from the animal's instinctual nature of sensuous aliveness, we are operating like robots that are just kind of bumping into things and really incapable of the visceral continuum that exists when nature interacts with itself, which is really what everything else is doing, other than humanity that tries to stomp on top of everything.
Yeah.
Everything else is, in nature is in conversation, is in relationship. And so that numbness, disconnection, depression, anxiety, dissociation, chronic fight flight, all of those stress response states, I think in so many ways is because we're so far removed from the design, the animal design that we are.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm.
So, um, I mean, yeah, I have to say, like, it's really fascinating. Like, we talk about human evolution as if like what to say? Like, we have somehow outgrown our animal roots.
Yeah.
But when I hear you speak, Jesse, I mean, uh, I'm really reminded that it's not about um transcending the body. It's all about coming home to it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's where real intimacy begins. So, what do you have to say on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is part of the obsession with transcendence and ascension, I think, is to try to escape pain. And since we're talking about pleasure, we have to also talk about the sister, the pain that,
Mm,
grief and gratitude, pain and pleasure, the palette of human experience is so vast with such color and texture. And I feel like part of our missing link in the conversation is our inability to be uncomfortable prevents us from experiencing a lot of the really magnificent things as well. So there's an edge to returning to that space of like, I get to feel all of what it is to be alive. And some might be more preferred than other sensations, but
yeah,
my capacity to feel any one thing expands my capacity to feel everything.
very true. Yep,
Hmm.
exactly. And like, um, okay, thank you so much for sharing this. But also, like I mentioned earlier, that about the orgasmic instinct. So, uh, how do we begin to trust our orgasm or organism again? Like, especially when we have been trained to override it.
Yeah. I think that for me, usually my first doorway for people is returning to gravity as the force that has always caught you. No matter how hard you have hit the ground, you have been caught over and over and over again. And to cultivate that awareness that no matter how hard my fall was, the ground has been there for me ongoingly since my emergence. And so I usually start with this relationship, and I'm very animistic in general. So I really believe that we're in conversation with a living world. And so that conversation with Earth and that force that's
Mhm,
just holding us constantly is
mhm,
the first, I think, beginning to trust at all. Um, and what I typically will do is I will support the system in orienting to the sensory world that makes contact with the physical vessel, and then the sensory world that exists inside of the vessel. And we're slowly growing our um, awareness and relationship with new sensations and giving them that gentle titration of becoming okay with things outside of my body, things inside of my body, and starting to cultivate trust through sensory experience, like coming in contact with something new in the body, outside of the body, that allows us to go, and this is okay too, and I'm still okay. And gravity is here holding me, has continued to be holding me. And I feel like that starts to presence the person, the being that
mhm,
has been wandering in timelines other than this one, and brings us back to now, which is always the primary entrance, right? So that feels like my first how is like feel for down, feel what's happening around you, feel what's happening within you a little at a time, and begin to what I call midwife the moment, which is like supporting the system, whether it is through breath or movement or sound, to be okay with what it's experiencing.
mhm.
So we're taught that we need to kind of like white knuckle, at least in my culture. There's very much white knuckling things, like just
Okay.
hold on real tight and try to block out any sensations and get to the other side. And so there's a lot of gritting in the jaw and tension in the bellies. And it's like, can you lean in to
Mhm,
the chaos and the magic that is every single moment and support your body to be able to ride that ride with openness, with permeability, with spaciousness to the experience of like, this might be strange, but I can ride it. Like I can be with what's here.
mm,
And I think that just amplifies our capacity to experience all the sweet things and all the nectar that life has in so many ways.
exactly. Exactly.
Mm,
Wow.
mm,
So, wow. So, if
mm.
you can share a moment like from your own life where reclaiming that instant changed everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. So
Mhm.
I've been in movement practice for a very long time. I lost a lot of weight when I was young, and I started moving my body for a very specific purpose. It was like to make the body do these shapes and function in this way and look this way. And I got really good at that. I got really good at making the body run like a well-oiled machine.
Mm,
And eventually it got to the point where it was only messages being sent one way, right? It was my mind and my perception of what I should be being
yeah.
kind of a slave driver to the body, like telling the body what it should do and be and how. And eventually my body started to fight back against that. And that's what I think burnout really is. It's the body going, "You're not hearing me. You're not listening to me. I'm trying to receive companionship from you," right? Like from consciousness to vessel. There's this companionship that, the most profound friendship we'll ever have in our lives is with the body, right? And so I got really, really sick. I developed an autoimmune condition.
Mm,
And even with all of my conceptual, intellectual understandings, it was only the experience of coming home to the conversation that my body was trying to have with me, even though it was a hard conversation to have. And I remember having my first experience with the kind of resonance in my animal that I now know as like life re-entering. And I remember having that trust with gravity and feeling life come back into my body after having been dormant in many of the doorways, like in many of the caverns of my system, had like turned the lights off to try to conserve resources, I think, and keep me from feeling the pain. And as I started to drink the breath back in, drink the life back into the body, it was like a spark, something that I can only explain as like what I think must be the creative spark of what we come from that pulses through the system, right? It pulses through the system and it just goes, "You're alive, you're here, you're alive, you're
mm,
here." And I remember just crumbling into tears and puddling in the floor and just going, "Wow, I get to be alive." It was
mm.
profound. Yeah.
True. That's very true.
Mm,
Yep. So, um, I mean,
mm,
I have to say that this really hits home for me because so many of us have um, outsourced our authority, like to the
mm.
culture, to trauma, algorithms. But really, I wonder, like, so, like, what if the wisdom that we seek has always been just under our skin? So, what do you have to say?
Oh, all of it. I personally feel like everything we look for outside of ourselves, it's a micro macrocosm kind of scenario. Like everything is right here
Mm,
in this body through our senses. And I think that part of our seeking is we're trying to know things. We're trying to know them instead of to live them, to
correct.
be in the kind of presence. And I think it's fear that asks us to try to know things, try really hard to know things. And I think really, truly, wisdom is the capacity to say, "I know nothing at all for sure," and isn't that miraculous? like,
Yeah.
isn't that just the most beautiful thing
Mm,
that I get to be met by so many curious moments for
mm,
growth, for deepening that I didn't even know was possible. And I feel like trying to know things actually limits that quite extensionally.
mhm,
So, um, yeah, that's I think what I would say is that it's all right here, and the reaching outside of you is actually probably a really good indication that your body's actually trying to get you to come in, but that feels scary. It feels scary to go in because I think what people often say is they almost worry that they will go to some kind of an oblivion or an abyss within their body because there's such depth there, and that they won't be able to return as though they're leaving instead of arriving more fully here, which is just like that's the interesting thing to me is that the more here you are, the more you actually trust in gravity and nature and your participation in your world. So it's actually the thing we're most scared of, I think, is having that felt sense experience. And so we run around chasing things we think we can know and- until we realize we can't know anything for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, definitely.
Mm.
And like, so you have worked with thousands of people across
Okay.
cultures.
Mm.
So what have you noticed about our capacity to the connection? What expands it? So,
Yeah. I mean, I do very strongly believe that relationship, whether it is with nature itself, our bodies, or each other, is one of our greatest growth opportunities, right? Like there is always more growth available, more deepening available, more capacity available in the context of relationship. And so
mm,
I've spent a lot of time really kind of like stroking the possibilities of what depth of vulnerability am I willing to have with myself and my world? And then can I bring that into the rest of the trajectory of relationship that I get to have in my life as as a huge pillar of strength, really. I think vulnerability is um, highly undervalued in terms of strength and the emotional resilience to bring your heart just because it's how you want to live your life and not because of what is going to happen on the other side. I think there's an immense capacity for that continuum to expand as a result of relating in a more honest way with ourselves and each other.
understood, understood. So, um, yeah. And is there a collective wound or maybe a pattern that you see again and again when people try to connect from a disconnected place?
I mean, I think it's the same ache that we see in the natural world. I mean, look at the destruction, right? There's just so much destruction. And I think the hardest part about looking at that is the ability to hold paradoxical emotions and experiences in the vessel at once. And I see that the wounding is like this almost being ripped from mother and not having the relationship that we could have had with the natural world seems to be like an inner longing that is always looking to be filled in some way. That I think the only thing that really fills that void that we experience is a willingness to be in relationship with these impermanent bodies and a world that's experiencing so much destruction. And so I think sometimes we go looking for
Mm,
things to fill those holes that really are just longing for those really primal relationships to self and to home. So yeah, I think the challenge becomes, authenticity is the most potent frequency that exists, right? And so it's like if we can't bring the truth of who we are because we've not known it, um, then there's always going to be a lack of depth that is available in our relationships. And
mm,
it's sad because there is so much there. Like there's so much possible
true.
if we could lean in a bit to that kind of trust.
Mm, wow,
Mm.
amazing. So, okay, and like, what to say? Like, if I have to say this, that uh, uh, any differently, it actually reminds me of something. A teacher once told me, right, that we can only meet others as deeply as we have met ourselves. So, like, maybe that's the most radical form of love, not just giving others our attention, but giving ourselves the connection that we crave. So, I thought, like, let me share this, but yeah. So, do you have ever faced resistance, like either from within or from others, when you bring erotic aliveness into the spiritual spaces?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I do walk around in the world telling everyone that I'm a witch, so, that usually that usually, like, separates the men from
Okay.
boys, you know? Um, so, I mean, I've experienced the persecution of,
Uh-huh.
not subscribing to the solely love and light language, and to the the conversations about
Mm.
aspects of humanity, like maybe in some context, messier aspects of humanity, and in some of the very purified spaces, even talking about eroticism or talking about
Right.
sensual, creative spark of aliveness in the system is perceived as a lower a lower level of, and I just don't agree. I don't have that experience. I believe that
Right.
that resistance often comes from an unwillingness to touch those places within ourselves, and that's fine. You know, people can be,
Right.
whatever their path is, whatever their door is fine. But I,
Mm.
I have found that there's usually an extensive amount of curiosity
Yeah.
around the kind of stuff that I'm bringing to the conversation. If people can get past the whatever connotation they have about, what it means to be a witch, which is just a funny thing in itself, that people think, they think it means something very different than what it does. And so, that is, I think, when people are willing to have like a deeper conversation with me, they find that
Right.
I am very much for, like, the resistance itself is part of this conversation. And this is, I mean, can be referred to in the way that they would in, like, IFS with parts, internal parts, right? Any aspect that is resistant is also asking for our attention, right? So any aspect that's like, I'm not sure about that, my work is always with sensations or with parts or with whatever comes up. It's like, can you go sit next to whatever's happening in your inner world and hold a curious presence of neutrality? Maybe not always compassion right away, but if you're, because oftentimes that is actually a protective mechanism that we've utilized because it wasn't safe to feel, you know, that kind of pulse moving through the body, or that kind of current, because it's a current. And it's funny because I love that it's a current of energy, and it's also current, like the present moment current,
Mhm.
because it's like the surge of being alive and a willingness to allow ourselves to feel that. There's going to be protective parts that are like, I'm not sure if this is okay. And I have them in my own
Yeah.
system too, and I've encountered them. I've tried to meet them with a lot of neutrality and as much gentleness. I'm a very big advocate for a more nurturing approach to what we might call healing, which I think is really just homing or coming home. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, a more nutritive, more nurturing approach, because most of the rest of the world is quite hard and fast, and so slow with some gentleness is a pretty profound way to meet your body, in your system. Mm.
Exactly. Totally agree. Wow. So, lovely. Yeah. And what's the one practice that's helped your clients move from shame to sovereignty? What do you have to say?
The one practice. Mm. I think radical self honesty.
Okay.
If I had to say something, I would say that being so honest with
Mhm.
what the true experience in your system is, moment to moment,
Mhm.
and meeting that not just from the mind, right? Like
Right.
it's an embodied honesty. It's like
Mm.
the ability to go, this is here right now. This is what I'm experiencing. And it doesn't need to be. And I guess if I had to add on to like a subcategory, it would be this like ability to try really hard not to put any particular sensations or emotions into a category of being wrong for being experienced, right? If it's here, it's for me, right? If it's here, it's something I get to be with. It's a growth opportunity. There's something for me. So I think that especially when we're speaking to shame, it's honoring and respecting the fact that even the parts that shame us in our inner world are doing so to try to keep us safe, and every part of us is trying to keep us safe and trying to help us to, you know, experience belonging in community. And so it's like all of our shame parts get to be part of the human soup as well. And so I think the sovereignty actually comes from this really radical self honesty that is embodied, that allows for whatever sensation, whatever emotion, whatever thought to be part of the soup, and to lead our lives from this like nurturing parental place that is caring for all of these parts and sensations with such reverence and respect.
Wow.
Mm.
That's amazing. Great. Lovely, lovely. What a conversation, Jesse. I mean,
Yeah.
you are fire, earth, water, and wind, and wrapped in poetry, I have to say. Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
So, thank you so much for bringing your wisdom, your truth, and your raw aliveness to this space. I
Mm.
mean, really, thank you so much. And for the listeners, I have to mention that, the listeners, if you felt tired or awakened and maybe even a little undone, good.
Mm.
That means
Yeah.
something has moved. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. And so Jesse, like if someone wants to connect with you, what will be the best medium to connect?
Yeah, I mean, I love emails. I'm pretty old school, so I love an email. My email is howl like a wolf at wildessence.org. So you can always email me. But I mean, my website and my Instagram are really great places just to make a connection, because I'm very much like the work that I do in the world. It requires a development of trust between myself and my clients that I really um hold with an immense amount of respect and integrity. I want my clients to trust in their own choices to have me be involved in their journey in any way that they're desiring that. So I invite just to begin a relationship. There's some free, places to just get your feet wet, but there's also I do a lot of deep stuff, as you can tell by the way that I'm speaking, and so people really need to be ready for that, and I'm open to it whenever they are. They can watch for however long they want to before they wanna come for a ride.
Exactly. Yeah. Amazing. So really lovely. And dear listeners, if you want to learn more about Jesse's work, rituals, or the retreats, check out the links into the show notes. And also, as always, if this episode has resonated, then share it with someone whom you love. Let it ripple. So,
Mm.
with this hope, until next time, stay soft, stay wild, and most of all, stay alive. So, this is your host, Avik, signing off from Pleasure Principles. Thank you so much. Have a great day.